The twin suns of Varantha hung low in the sky when Commander Raylan of the Zethari made a decision that shocked his entire council. His world was entering a dangerous season called the Spiral Dawn. A time when storms twisted across the surface and strange creatures woke from deep caverns. Every generation. The ruling family needed a guide, someone brave and steady to help the ruler's children survive their first rite of responsibility. But this time, no Zethari warrior was strong enough, calm enough, or balanced enough. The old traditions said a guide must be someone from beyond their world, someone whose spirit did not bend under fear or pressure. And according to ancient records, only humans had ever met that requirement. So Raylan issued the order that silenced the council hall. "Bring me a human," he said. "My daughters cannot face the Spiral Dawn alone." His daughters, Lyra and Sarai, stood behind him. They were young by Zethari standards. Graceful, tall, with glowing patterns along their arms. Both were brave. But bravery alone wasn't enough. They needed stability, a clear mind, someone who could guide them without the weight of Zethari politics or fear. The council argued, fearful of involving humans. But Raylan's voice cut through every protest. "If humans are as strong as the old stories say," he declared, "then a human will protect them better than any soldier." So, against tradition and fear, the council sent envoys to the nearest human outpost. That was how Captain Ethan Ward entered a story he never expected. Ethan had been stationed on a small human listening post, orbiting the edge of Varantha. He lived a quiet life, checking sensors, maintaining equipment, and waiting for the next reassignment. He had survived 3 wars, built a reputation as a calm strategist, and earned the trust of everyone who served with him. But he had no idea that an alien ruler was searching for someone exactly like him. When the Zethari shuttle arrived at the outpost, Ethan thought at first it was a diplomatic mistake. The envoy, a tall Zethari with silver markings on his skin, bowed deeply before speaking. "Our commander requests the presence of a human," the envoy said. "One whose heart is steady and whose judgment does not break." Ethan blinked. "You want me?" The envoy studied him carefully, as if reading something deeper than his expression. "Yes," he said at last. "You match the description." Ethan hesitated. He had trained for combat, for rescue missions, for evacuation work, but not for alien traditions. Still, he felt something in the envoy's tone, urgency, fear, and hope all together. "What's this really about?" Ethan asked. The envoy gave a slow breath. "Our ruler's daughters must face the Spiral Dawn. They need a guide. And only a human can take that role. Without one, they will not survive." Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had seen young soldiers tremble before dangerous missions, but he had never heard of a culture depending on a human stranger for survival. Still, he could not turn away from someone who needed help. That was not who he was. "All right," he said quietly. "Take me to them." The moment he stepped onto Varantha, Ethan felt a strange calm settle over him. The atmosphere shimmered with soft lights. The ground vibrated gently, almost like a heartbeat. The sky was painted with swirling colors. When he entered the ruler's chamber, 2 alien girls, almost his height, elegant and strong, stood beside Commander Raylan. Their glowing arm markings shifted like living rivers. Raylan stepped forward. "Human, I am Commander Raylan of the Zethari. Thank you for coming." Ethan bowed slightly. "I was told you need a guide. I don't know your customs, but I'll do my best." Raylan studied him with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Our traditions forbid forcing anyone into this duty. You must agree freely. If you take the role, you must protect my daughters, teach them calm thinking, help them face challenges, and stand with them through the Spiral Dawn." Ethan nodded slowly. "What exactly is the Spiral Dawn?" Lyra, the older sister, stepped forward. Her voice was gentle, soft, but firm. "It is a season when storms tear through the land, strange creatures wake, the air becomes heavy and dangerous. We must walk the path of balance, a long journey through our world. Only then are we considered ready for future leadership." Sarai, the younger one, lifted her hand slightly in greeting. "We do not need a fighter," she said. "We need someone who does not panic. Someone who can make decisions when fear clouds everything." Ethan felt their eyes on him, not demanding, not desperate, but hopeful. They weren't asking for power. They were asking for guidance. It reminded him of the young recruits he had trained on Earth. Nervous, determined, trying their best. "So you believe a human is the right one for this?" Ethan asked. Rollin nodded once. "Yes. Your kind does not fold easily. You face fear with logic. You rebuild even after chaos. That is the trait my daughters must learn." Ethan wasn't used to being described like that. He rubbed the back of his neck, thinking he had never been a parent and never trained alien royalty. But he knew what it meant to stand with someone, to guide them until they found their strength. "All right," Ethan said finally. "I accept the role." Sarai's eyes widened. Lyra's shoulders relaxed as if a heavy weight lifted from them. Rollin bowed his head in deep respect, something reserved only for sacred promises in Zythari culture. "You have done more than accept," Raylan said. "You have given them a chance at life." Ethan swallowed. The responsibility felt heavier now. A few hours later, he was shown to the training grounds where the first lessons would begin. Lyra and Sarai waited for him, each carrying a small crystal sphere used in Zythari focus training. Ethan didn't know the tool, but he recognized the purpose: stability, concentration, awareness. Lyra spoke first. "Our father says you survived 3 wars. How do you stay calm when everything falls apart?" Ethan looked at the alien sisters. They were young, but their eyes carried the weight of expectation. They weren't spoiled royalty. They were 2 people trying to be strong. He sat down on a smooth stone platform and motioned for them to join him. "You don't stay calm because you're brave," he said gently. "You stay calm because someone else needs you to. You focus on who you're protecting. That keeps your mind clear." Sarai held her sphere tightly. "And you will protect us?" Ethan smiled softly. "I will guide you. And I will stand with you. You're not alone." For the first time, both sisters smiled. The training began with simple exercises. Ethan showed them breathing techniques he used during high-pressure missions. Lyra learned quickly, controlling her pulse, steadying her hand. Sarai struggled at first but eventually matched her sister's rhythm. Ethan encouraged them, praising progress, never raising his voice. By evening, Lyra said quietly, "No Zythari has ever taught us like this." "That's because I'm not Zythari," Ethan replied with a grin. "I'm just a human trying to help." As night fell, strange winds moved across the land. Lights in the sky twisted like living ribbons. This was only the edge of the spiral dawn. Ethan watched the shifting colors and felt the air grow heavy. The sisters stood beside him. They didn't look afraid anymore, not because the danger was gone, but because they finally had someone steady beside them. Sarai whispered, "Ethan, do you think we can survive the spiral dawn?" He looked at her, then at Lyra, and nodded with calm certainty. "You will," he said, "because we'll face it together." And for the first time in many generations, the daughters of a Zythari ruler felt hope. The first morning of Spiral Dawn arrived with a strange stillness across Varantha. The sky carried long streaks of glowing blue, like paint brushed by invisible hands. The ground shook every few minutes, not violently but as if something deep inside the planet had awakened. For the Zythari people, this was the sign that their world was entering its most dangerous season. For Ethan, it meant his task as guide had truly begun. Lyra and Sarai stood near the entrance of the palace, dressed in traveling gear with glowing markings brighter than usual. Their father, Commander Rollin, watched them silently. His expression was strong, yet even he could not fully hide the fear of a parent sending his children into danger. Ethan approached wearing a lightweight Zythari armor vest that had been adjusted for his human shape. It felt strange, like wearing a layer of cool metal that breathed with him. Lyra handed him a wristband with a shimmering stone. "This will help you sense energy shifts," she explained softly. "Humans cannot naturally detect them the way we can." Ethan nodded. "Thank you. I'll trust your instincts too." Sarai smiled nervously. Our instincts are sometimes wrong. Then we'll fix them, Ethan said with a calm grin. That's what training is for. Commander Rowland stepped forward. Human guide. You will lead them through the path of balance. But remember this. The Spiral Dawn is alive. It changes. It does not care about tradition. Ethan absorbed every word. I'll keep them safe. That's my promise. Rowland placed his hand on his daughter's shoulders. Learn from him, listen to him, and trust each other more than ever. The sisters nodded, though their eyes glimmered with emotion. They were not only heirs to a powerful clan. They were two young women, walking into the unknown, holding on to courage because their father asked them to. The journey began as they left the palace and walked toward the luminous plains. Varentha's landscape was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Giant crystalline towers grew from the earth like frozen lightning. Strange flowers opened and closed, depending on vibrations in the air. Sometimes the wind carried distant whispers, almost like voices calling from another world. Sarai noticed Ethan studying the surroundings. Does your world look like this? Earth? Ethan shook his head. No. We have blue skies, green trees, and storms. But nothing like this. Your world feels alive, like it's watching us. Lyra glanced at him. That is exactly how Spiral Dawn works. It watches. It tests. It reacts to our fear. Then we stay calm, Ethan said. Always. That's our rule. They walked for hours, practicing breathing techniques while navigating uneven terrain. At one point, the ground split slightly, creating a narrow crack that glowed from within. Lyra stopped instantly, breathing fast. This wasn't here yesterday, she whispered. Sarai bent down to look closer. Energy fissure. A small one. We can cross it. Ethan studied the fissure, then the shaking ground. Not yet. We need to find a stable point. How do you know? Sarai asked. Because unstable ground behaves the same everywhere, Ethan replied. War zones, collapsed buildings, mountain cliffs. The signs are always the same. Lyra stared at him with new respect. You have walked through danger your whole life. Not my whole life, Ethan said with a soft smile. But enough to understand how to keep people alive. They circled the fissure until they found a safe area to jump across. Sarai almost slipped, but Ethan grabbed her arm, steadying her gently. You're fine, he said reassuringly. Her eyes softened. You make even the scary things feel normal. That's my job, Ethan replied. By midday, they reached the first trial site, a place called the Field of Echoes. Ethan didn't know why it was named like that until the wind began to shift. The air carried not just voices, but memories, sounds of laughter, fear, arguments, and singing all mixed together, bouncing around like ghosts from the past. Sarai covered her ears. They're too loud. Too many. Too many. Too many. Lyra's hands trembled slightly. These are echoes of every Zythari who walked this path before. Their fears left marks. Ethan stood between them. Look at me. Focus on breathing. Slow in, slow out. Their chests rose and fell, just as he taught them during training. Still, the voices grew stronger. Ethan's wristband lit up, warning of shifting energy, and the air thickened with invisible pressure. Lyra swallowed. We have to walk through it. That is the rule. If we stop, the memories get stronger. Ethan stepped forward first. Then I'll lead. Follow right behind me. Stay close. The voices intensified as soon as they entered the field. Ethan heard whispers that didn't belong to him, regrets of strangers, fears of warriors long gone, and shouts from battles he never fought. But he forced himself to breathe calmly. One step at a time, he moved forward, and the sisters walked right behind him, using his presence as a shield. Sarai whispered shakily. Why don't the voices affect you the same way? They do. Ethan answered honestly. But fear doesn't get to decide how I act. I decide that. Lyra held on to her focus sphere tightly. That is what Father wanted us to learn. Ethan kept them moving in a slow, steady rhythm until the echoes began to fade. When they exited the field, the air returned to normal. Sarai collapsed onto the ground, exhausted. Lyra bent forward, breathing deeply. Ethan knelt beside them. You both did really well. That was harder than anything we trained for. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with relief. We did it because you kept us steady. Sarai nodded weakly. I could hear your voice even when everything else was screaming. Ethan touched her shoulder gently. Good. Then remember that for the next trial. They continued their journey, taking breaks only when necessary. Ethan helped the sisters refine their focus techniques. Lyra practiced grounding her emotions, while Sarai trained to slow her thoughts. They asked Ethan countless questions about Earth, about his missions, about how humans learn to be calm. He answered each question patiently, never judging their curiosity. He wanted them to feel safe asking anything. As evening approached, they set camp near a glowing river that pulsed with warm light. Zithari nights were beautiful, filled with floating sparks like fireflies. The sisters sat near the water, while Ethan prepared their supplies. Sarai watched him. Ethan, will you return to your planet after this journey ends? He glanced up. Probably. My duty is there. Lyra's voice softened. But you took this duty too. You guide us like someone who has known us for years. Ethan thought for a moment. Sometimes, people enter your life at the right time, even if you never expected it. That's what this journey feels like. Sarai smiled a little. For us too. The calm moment lasted only a short while. Suddenly, the river pulsed brighter, and the ground trembled violently. Ethan jumped to his feet and pulled the sisters closer. What's happening? He asked. Lyra's markings flared with fear. A shift in the spiral dawn. It's early. Too early. From the far side of the river, a dark shape rose from the ground. It was like molten stone forming into a creature large, heavy, with glowing cracks along its body. Sarai gasped. River Warden. It wasn't supposed to appear yet. The creature roared, shaking the ground. Ethan positioned himself in front of the sisters, without thinking. Stay behind me, he ordered. Lyra's voice trembled. Ethan. This creature reacts to movement. If we run, it will chase. Then we don't run, Ethan said firmly. We think. The creature stomped forward, sensing their presence. Ethan studied its pattern of movement, the timing of its glowing cracks, the rhythm of its steps. It reminded him of a seismic creature he once studied during a rescue mission. We need to move slowly, he whispered. Very slowly. And stay low. He crouched, guiding the sisters with steady gestures. They followed his pace, trusting him completely. The River Warden turned its massive head toward them, glowing eyes pulsing in warning. Sarai clutched Lyra's arm. Ethan. This is too close. Ethan continued moving, eyes locked on the creature. Fear lies to you. Trust your steps. The glowing cracks on the creature dimmed slightly. It sniffed the air, confused. Ethan realized it couldn't fully detect them when they controlled their breathing. Match my breaths, he whispered. Exactly. Together, they breathed as one slow, steady, controlled. The creature hesitated, then slowly sank back into the riverbed, melting into the glowing water until it disappeared completely. Only then did the sisters gasp for air, shaking. Lyra turned to Ethan with wide eyes. How did you know what to do? Ethan let out a shaky laugh. I didn't. Not completely. But fear makes you stop thinking. I needed both of you to think. Sarai grabbed his arm. You saved us again. Without fighting. Without hurting anything. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. Guiding isn't about defeating danger. It's about passing through it together. As night fell fully, the sisters sat close to him, still trembling from the encounter but filled with new admiration. For the first time, they understood why their father believed only a human could guide them. And Ethan. Watching the quiet river return to its soft glow, knew one thing with certainty: the spiral dawn was only beginning. The night after the River Warden encounter passed with uneasy silence. The glowing river calmed, the ground settled, and the sky shifted back to soft colors. But Ethan knew the calm would not last. Spiral dawn grew stronger every day, and each new trial was harder than the last. Lyra and Sarai sat close to the campfire, their faces illuminated by amber light. The warmth steadied their hands, but the memory of facing the creature lingered in their eyes. Ethan checked their supplies, tightening straps, organizing tools, making sure nothing slowed them down. When he looked up, Sarai was watching him quietly. "You didn't sleep," she said. "I rested enough," Ethan replied with a small smile. "Guides don't get to sleep deeply when danger is close." Lyra tilted her head. "We noticed you were awake almost the entire night. You listened to the ground. You watched the sky. You even checked our breath while we slept." "That's what a good leader does," Ethan answered gently. "Protecting others means staying aware." Sarai lowered her gaze, touched by his dedication. "No Zythari guide ever did that for us." Ethan shrugged lightly. "Maybe they didn't care enough." Sarai's voice softened. "But you do." Ethan didn't answer. He simply smiled and motioned for them to pack up. The journey ahead was long, and the next trial, according to the old Zythari map, was the most unpredictable: the shattered maze. As they walked away from the river, the air thickened again, not with fear but with energy. Varentha's landscape began shifting into jagged shapes. Sharp rock formations twisted upward, forming towering walls that reached toward the sky. The maze waited in the center, filled with illusions and shifting paths. Even seasoned warriors got lost inside. Lyra's steps slowed. "I've heard stories. Some people never find their way out." "But they panicked," Ethan said calmly. "We won't." Sarai tightened her bag strap. "The maze reacts to fear, just like the Field of Echoes did. And like that creature did last night," Ethan added. "Your world has a pattern. Once we understand it, we'll pass through safely." Lyra glanced at him with a small smile. "You speak as if you've lived here for years." "Not years," Ethan replied. "Just long enough to care what happens to you both." As they reached the entrance of the maze, the wind grew quiet, too quiet. The jagged walls shimmered faintly. Ethan placed his hand against the stone. It pulsed once, as if alive. Sarai whispered, "It's sensing us." "Then let it sense calm," Ethan said. "Breathe slowly. Stay close to me. No one wanders." They stepped inside. The maze immediately began shifting. The walls changed angles. The ground formed new paths. Every few seconds, the maze tried to separate them, opening false routes that looked safer but led nowhere. Ethan's instincts sharpened. He had led teams through burning buildings, through collapsed caves, through battlefields where smoke made every step uncertain. This maze, though alien, behaved in a familiar way. It tried to break formation. "Stay behind me. Don't look at the walls. Look at my back," Ethan instructed. Sarai nodded quickly. Lyra kept her breathing steady. The first challenge came when the path split into 3 identical corridors. The maze hummed, urging them to choose. Ethan studied the ground. 2 paths were too clean, too untouched. The middle one had small cracks, tiny markings, signs of previous footsteps. "This way," Ethan said, pointing to the worn path. "How do you know?" Sarai asked. "Safe paths never look perfect," Ethan replied. "Only dangerous traps pretend to be flawless." They followed the cracked corridor until the air thickened again. Suddenly, the walls flashed with light, forming images moving illusions of fear. Lyra gasped when she saw a projection of her father wounded. Sarai saw shadows of her own failures replaying endlessly. Ethan stopped immediately and turned to face them. "These pictures aren't real," he said firmly. "They're meant to attack your mind. Don't let them." Sarai trembled. "But they feel real." Ethan stepped closer to her. "Look at me. Focus here, not on the images." She met his eyes, and her breathing slowed. Lyra swallowed hard. Ethan, the maze is showing me losing control. It's showing me failing the people I love. Ethan placed a steady hand on her shoulder. You haven't failed anyone, and you're not walking alone. The illusions flickered, weakened by their calm. The maze seemed frustrated. It pulsed again, and the images vanished instantly, replaced by darkness. That's right, Ethan whispered to the walls. Try harder. The maze responded with a deep vibration. Long stones shifted, blocking their path. Ethan didn't flinch. He guided the sisters around the obstruction, using their focus spheres to detect energy shifts. When Lyra's sphere vibrated too fast, he changed direction. When Sarai felt the air get too cold, he stopped and reassessed. Together, they made slow but steady progress. Hours passed, and the maze continued to test them. A sudden gust of air opened a false exit, revealing bright sunlight outside. Sarai took a step toward it, before Ethan grabbed her arm gently. Don't, he warned. The light's too bright. That's not real. Sarai's eyes widened. She hadn't even realized she was moving toward danger. Ethan squeezed her arm gently to reassure her. You're doing great, he said. Just stay with me. Lyra exhaled shakily. How are you so certain about everything? I'm not, Ethan answered with honesty. But acting with doubt is still better than standing still with fear. At last, after what felt like half a day, they reached the heart of the maze, a wide open chamber where the walls rose into the sky. The air glowed with pale silver light. A giant stone tower stood in the center, its surface covered in ancient Zethari symbols. Lyra whispered. This is the pillar of choice. To leave the maze, we must place our hands on it. Omenly Rugger stare. Omenly Rugger stares on. Lyra whispered. Lyra whispered. Omenly Ra whispered. This. Omenly Ra whispered on Omenly Rugger stares on. Lyra whispered on Omenly Rugger stares on. Sarai added. If the maze accepts us, the path will open. If it doesn't, the walls may never shift again. Ethan studied the pillar. It tests your bond, not your strength. Lyra blinked. Our bond? Yes, Ethan said. You two must work together, fully trust each other. The maze is designed to break that trust. If you stand united, it loses. Sarai looked at Lyra, her eyes softening. We argue too much. I know that. Lyra swallowed. And I try to take control too often. Ethan stepped back slowly. Tell each other what you need to hear, not what the maze wants you to feel. Oh, the sisters faced each other. For a moment, there was silence. Then Sarai spoke, voice trembling. Lyra, I always feel like I'm behind you. Like you're better, stronger. And I'm slowing you down. Lyra shook her head quickly. Sarai, I'm only strong because I know you're near. You're the gentle one. You're the calm one. You balance me. Sarai wiped her eyes. But sometimes I feel like a burden. You're not, Lyra said firmly. You're my sister. You're half of my strength. Ethan watched quietly. They were saying the words they had carried for years. Lyra placed her hand on Sarai's. We face the dawn together. Sarai nodded slowly. Together, they approached the pillar and placed their hands on the glowing surface. Ethan held his breath. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the symbols lit up in brilliant gold. The maze trembled once, twice, and the walls shifted away, opening a clear path to the outside world. A soft wind touched their faces. Warm and welcoming. Sarai gasped. It worked. Lyra turned to Ethan with tears in her eyes. Because you taught us how to trust each other. Ethan shook his head. You already had that trust. You just needed to hear it aloud. They exited the maze, stepping onto open plains again. The sky shimmered with brighter colors. Spiral dawn was still active, but the worst of the trials were behind them. As they walked toward the final marker on the map, Ethan glanced at the sisters. They were no longer trembling girls. Their steps were confident. Their breathing smooth, their eyes steady. They were becoming leaders. Lyra spoke softly. Ethan, when this journey ends, what will happen to you? I'll return to my outpost, he replied. That's where I belong. Sarai hesitated. And us? You'll lead your people one day, Ethan said, because you've earned it. Lyra looked ahead, thoughtful. But you changed us. You taught us how to survive, how to think, how to calm storms inside our hearts. That is not something we forget. Ethan smiled gently. You don't have to forget, but you don't need me anymore. Sarai shook her head slowly. We will always need the person who guided us when our world shook. Before Ethan could respond, the sky flashed with golden light. Commander Rallan appeared on a hover platform, descending quickly. When he landed, he rushed toward his daughters, relief flooding his expression. You survived the maze, he whispered, pulling them close. Lyra nodded proudly. Because Ethan guided us. Rallan turned to the human, eyes shining not just with gratitude, but with deep respect. You did more than fulfill your role, Rallan said. You gave them strength no Zythari could. Ethan bowed slightly. They already had the strength. I only helped them see it. Raylan placed a hand over his heart, a sacred gesture. Human. Our world owes you a debt. Ethan looked at Lyra and Sarai. They weren't terrified girls anymore. They were confident, balanced, ready for whatever came next. His duty was complete, and as the spiral dawn ended, Varentha would long remember the day a human walked their dangerous path, not as a warrior, not as a conqueror, but as a guide who brought light through every shadow.